10 and 11-year-olds, the highest level of obesity since records began. In your mind, Professor, what has gone wrong here? Because it seems something has gone terribly wrong for this not to have been getting better at all.
Well, we know child obesity levels have been increasing for many, many years, and we've seen a very consistent rise in severe obesity, which is the major problem because these are the children that are likely to be the ones that will bankrupt our NHS. But in terms of what the government have been doing over the last 10 years, they've focused their attention on trying to sort of stop the increase from those that are normal weight into the overweight range. But in doing so, they've ignored the needs of those severe obese children that are skyrocketing. And that 22,000 figure is not all children. That's actually just per school year. So if you add that up over the sort of 18 years, we get a serious figure, you know, well over 300,000 children that have severe obesity. And to put that into context, that would be at a level that if they were adults, they would be immediately eligible for surgery. And there is currently no provision whatsoever for the needs of these children. Government's own advice suggests that they should have what's called a Tier 3 service. And actually, at the moment, for those 2.5 million children that are obese, or those 200,000 children that are severely obese, there is provision for about 150 children. And yes, I said that correctly. Despite the numbers being about 2.5 million, there's provision for about 150 children, which really demonstrates absolutely zero action for the needs of these very, very vulnerable children.
Professor Gately, I find this all so depressing. We've got Mia and her mum here in the studio who've done made brilliant work to try, and we're going to talk to them in a moment, to try and tackle your problems, Mia, haven't you, when you were much younger and dealing with it as you grew up. But ultimately, it's so depressing. All we talk about is obesity levels. You've talked about the government should do more. The government says it is doing stuff. They've got an ambitious plan to try and halve the number of childhood obesity within 10 years, and yet still the numbers go up. Do we almost have to get to the point where we sort of call it as we see it and tackle things head on? Say to youngsters, you're overweight, it's not just your fault, it's your parents' fault. How do we deal with it? Because it doesn't seem to matter how many programmes or how many advices, nothing is changing.
Well, I think nothing is changing because of the fact that there is no action. And that's a bit people are missing here. Government talk about an ambitious plan, but it is only ambitious in its effort to prevent obesity.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you know, people will say that it isn't necessarily about the government. We don't want to live in a nanny state. It's about individual action, isn't it? And are we, in a sense, by blaming the government, blaming the few manufacturers, you know, there is an argument to say that we should just deal with it ourselves.
We've been blaming children and we've been blaming their parents for many, many decades. And really all that's got us is increasing rates in depression, in anxiety, in a whole range of social and mental health issues for our children. So we've got to stop blaming children and their parents, because what we know is that the environment children live in, the environment they grow up in, is the problem. And in many ways, that is the government's responsibility. You know, in terms of school provision of physical education, it is going down. In terms of school food, it is worse than it's ever been. So there are a whole range of issues that are out there.
Yeah,
the other thing is, in severe obesity, I think a point many people miss.
Well, sorry, just to interrupt at that point, because, you know, whatever's going on with the amount of exercise that you have at school, whatever's going on with the school food, and, you know, a lot of schools are taking steps to remedy this. At the end of the day, it's parents that are putting food on the plates when their children get home, and it's parents who can say, you know, actually get out of your, you know, watching TV, you're playing a computer game, get up and do some exercise, isn't it?
I can tell you, having worked with many, many thousands of children and their families, that their parents do not want their children to go and suffer every single day the burden, the abuse that they receive on a day-to-day basis, to then be failed in many, many ways. What we know of severe obesity is that many children with severe obesity have serious mental health issues and they have serious social capital issues as well. And they are the responsibility in many ways of people around them to help and support them in ways that parents can't. And I think that's the point. point. You know, we have a whole range of efforts in place to help people with type 2 diabetes, with cancer, with heart disease, all these other things that one would argue are caused in exactly the same way as obesity. And yet we vilify parents and their children for obesity. But those other conditions we don't. And I just think that's unfair. I think we need stronger action around this. Of course, parents are part of the solution, but they cannot do it alone. And I've met many thousands and thousands of parents that really are struggling alone when they really need some help.